The onset, I want to congratulate and thank Senator Catherine Muma, one of the members of Speaker's panel. I think she's doing very well. I think this is a very unique area of topic on SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. Speaker, it behooves all of us that we left Millennium Development Goals that was supposed to be achieved in a certain period of time. Mr. Speaker, this is a wonderful motion. I think Mr. Speaker, many people would assume that Senate is trying to look for the job that they want to do. But the courts have decided, Mr. Speaker, you remember the Supreme Court decision that Senate no longer, and I want, because I was following submissions earlier on, because I was held up in exigencies of duties somewhere, Mr. Speaker, the courts have ruled, even Supreme Court, and my citation is escaping my mind, that Senate does not only oversight equitable shareable revenue, a Senate also oversight own source revenue. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this because I'm aware there are some cabinet secretaries who fail to honor the question time. That they think that going to National Assembly is better than going to Senate because they have powers of budgeting. I think they are behind news because Supreme Court has ruled again, Mr. Speaker, that both houses, under Article 93 of the Parliament, that Senate and National Assembly participate in budget-making process, Mr. Speaker, sir. And therefore, I want to say that when we have question time, it is the order of the House. It is the amendment of standing orders came from the executive, and we know the president means very well. Mr. Speaker, those cabinet secretaries who continuously skive or fail to appear before Senate to answer public questions. This is not Senator Katuri's, Murungi's questions, or Senator Nyutu, or Senator Kamara, or Senator Catherine Muma. Questions, these are questions that we are asking on behalf of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, those cabinet ministers, we are marking them, and when time comes, appropriate action shall be taken against them, because, Mr. Speaker, we cannot have a country where people fail to account for the decisions they make in office. And they don't make it free of charge. We pay them to do. And therefore, I wanted to put that into perspective so that many people do not imagine Senate is looking for the work they want to do. Our role is anchored in the Constitution, including the role of coming up with SDGs. Mr. Speaker, in the upshot, the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, were for the developing countries, Mr. Speaker. But when it came to Sustainable Development Goals, it moved now to all countries, regardless of whether they are rich or poor, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, the SDGs is important because we will have the superpower countries, including the first world countries, developing countries, the underdeveloping countries, the third world countries, sitting on the table and discussing about the future of the planet. Mr. Speaker, there are 4 dimensions that SDGs wants to achieve. 1 is people, 2 is prosperity, 3 is planet, which is the earth, 4 is partnership, and 5 is peace. When you encapsulate the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, it boils to 5 dimensions, where we look at the people. For example, as Senator Kamara said, the issue of poverty, one of the agenda is there should be no poverty, Mr. Speaker, sir, across the country or across the globe. Number 2, we should have zero hunger. It is sad that in this day and time, some Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, and we come from a drought that was very serious, some Kenyans are still dying because of hunger, or even across the world, or even in Africa, Mr. Speaker. Then we have what you call good health, Mr. Speaker. Good health is, I'm happy the government, through the plan of His Excellency the President and the government, they want to roll out universal health coverage to ensure every Kenyan has an access, Mr. Speaker, to medical health. And this is anchored also in the SDGs, Mr. Speaker. We want also to ensure, and you have heard the government, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of NHIF, by ensuring that people who at least do not earn, we pay NHIF based on the earnings and rationalization, Mr. Speaker. So that that person, an ordinary Kenya, a mama mboga or a boda, will pay less for NHIF card. But you and me, who are salaried, should pay more to cover the others, Mr. Speaker. And the issue of health, And well-being is very important. I hope it includes also the issue of reproductive health, the issue of nutrition, especially for the children, Mr. Speaker, who are still facing a lot of challenges when it comes to access to health. And I think Article 43, Mr. Speaker, has put it very well, that access to health is one of the critical issues. And I want to thank the President through the manifesto of the plan. One of the factors that have been given attention, Mr. Speaker, is on the issue of access to universal health coverage across counties. Mr. Speaker, while we agree that health has been devolved, there is still a big role that counties play. Because on the issue, Mr. Speaker, and you served in the law house before, the role of the national government has been to develop the health policy. That is why when we want now national government to partner with counties in terms of providing medical health care, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I think it is very important that counties must take their rightful position. I come from a county where the issues of health have become a challenge, Mr. Speaker, where health has gone to the knees, Mr. Speaker, where when you go to Kapsabet County Referral Hospital, Mr. Speaker, there are no drugs. The services are very poor, Mr. Speaker. That is why the biggest question that many Kenyans continue to ask, should we roll back, should we bring back health to be a national government function? The question that many Kenyans ask, because if they are not providing sufficient services of health, for example, in Busia County, or Kakamega County, or in Nandi, Mr. Speaker, what should be the role of national government, yet the health function has been devolved, Mr. Speaker? And therefore, we come, and Mr. Speaker, we need to be honest. Counties, I've seen counties where, when they are allocating health function through their budget, they put a certain amount of money, then they think health is not very important, they go and pull back the resources from that account, Mr. Speaker, and then come and take it to the other functions like roads, like emergency services, what we call disaster management, Mr. Speaker. We must be honest with ourselves, Mr. Speaker, and therefore it continues to be a challenge on the matter of health, Mr. Speaker, especially in our counties. Counties must take their rightful position in providing health. But where I come from, Nandi County, we are still performing very poorly in terms of service provision, Mr. Speaker. There are no drugs. I'm happy the Public Service Commission has renewed contracts of universal health coverage, Mr. Speaker. The facilities that are there, Mr. Speaker, the infrastructure, for example, like Kobuja, Mr. Speaker, the expansion of Kobuja Health Center is still a problem, Mr. Speaker, yet there were money that was allocated, Mr. Speaker. When you got pediatric in Kapsabet County Referral Hospital, it is wobbling. When you go to expansion of Maraba, Mr. Speaker, when they were expanding maternity wing, it's wobbling. I went to Chepterwa in Nyayo Ward, Mr. Speaker, and it has told, Mr. Speaker, and yet the national government gave money before in the last many financial years. And can you believe Nandi has been able to receive over 40 billion since I became the senator of this Republic of Kenya, Nandi, Mr. Speaker. So on the issue of health, if you have to use Nandi as a standard of provision of health, because I don't know other counties, then counties and Nandi specifically continues to perform poorly in terms of health provision and service to the great people of Nandi. Mr. Speaker, there's a statement I asked about the health committee on the status of health in Nandi. They are yet to respond. But Mr. Speaker, we cannot continue dispensing funds to the people, to the counties, and then when you go there, you are being told by Mwananchi, Mheshimiwa, I went to an hospital, but I was not given drugs, Mr. Speaker. When you go, for example, to Kapsabet town, there are many chemists, and people are saying, you know, Kapsabet is doing very well because there are many chemists. There are many chemists because Kapsabet County Referral Hospital, there is no drugs in county. People say there are so many private clinics in Kapsabet town, for example. It is because there is no medical services or tele-services in Kapsabet County Referral Hospital, Mr. Speaker. So in fact, we are failing in implementation of SDGs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another point that I wanted to make is under Article 43 on the issue to access to clean water. I think, Mr. Speaker, it's sad where I come from, we still struggle, for example, access to water. And you know Nandi is rainy throughout the year. But can you believe we still have challenges of waterborne diseases, Mr. Speaker? Because we can't access clean water. And I'm happy national government has constructed and upgraded to 14 billion, Mr. Speaker, Keben Dam, that will provide water to Kapsabet city, Kapsabet town. It will provide water to environments around Lesos, among other areas, Keben areas, Mr. Speaker, and even Nandi's town, Mr. Speaker. There is still a challenge, Mr. Speaker, on water and sanitation. I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the national government because they have allocated with Longorian water project and Nandil's water and sanitation program that will be constructed from Kosoiwa, around 1.2 billion in water and sanitation within Nandil's town, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we are still looking at maybe Keses dam, Mr. Speaker. We need to still expand even at the tune of 1.2 billion so that water through gravity all the way to Lesos, to Chepterit, and all the way to around Baraton they can access, Mr. Speaker. That is the only way counties can realize the implementation of 17 SDG goals. And I'm using Nandi as an example because I'm well versed from where I come, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another factor that I wanted to, apart from clean water and sanitation, even in this city, Mr. Speaker, we still have, and Senator of Muranga is seated behind me, Senator Nyutu, the issue of access to water provision to Nairobi City County, Mr. Speaker, is, I remember there was a tussle with the former county government on ensuring that we get water to Nairobi. Because, Mr. Speaker, the water in Nairobi, to get water in Nairobi is like getting medicine. You are not sure. Many Kenyans in this city, Mr. Speaker, approximately 4 to 6 million, cannot even access water. Because I am told, apparently, the million of liters that come to Nairobi City is not sufficient. So getting water, you can get drugs and get other things in Nairobi City, Mr. Speaker, than even accessing water. And therefore, it still continue to be, even sanitation in this city. When you go to slums, Mukuru, Kwanjenga, Kibra, among other Madara, and many other slums within the region, Mr. Speaker, they still have big challenge of sanitation. And I think, Mr. Speaker, in line with what the president has on the issue of plan, Mr. Speaker, we talk about affordable housing. And when we have this affordable housing by the president, Mr. Speaker, it will allow the management of access. Because you go to Kilimani, a house that was the water sanitation, the sewerage system that was, and Senator Wamatinga had that motion before. You go to Kilimani here, the Chinese come and construct a building of 1,000 people. That, the water system, the sewerage system that was there was only meant for 10 people. How do these 1,000 people operate on the sewerage system that is there, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, finally, because I can see my light is on the good health, because these are 17 SDG goals. The issue of quality education, I want to agree, Mr. Speaker, as Nelson Mandela said, education becomes one of the critical equality tools that can be used. And the issue of industry, I'm happy the government yesterday, President William Ruto launched the electric motorbikes, and I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, it's one of the 17 SDG goals. The president also has talked about innovation and infrastructure. We have Juakali sector. Mr. Speaker, we should continue supporting Juakali sector, Mr. Speaker, and many others. Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time and my colleagues, Mr. Speaker, when you look under Article 132 on functions of the president, Part 1C, it says the president shall provide progress report. So what Senator Catherine Muma is doing is what we expect in future, the president, when he's bringing these reports under Article 10, because when you look at SDGs, it is anchored in Article 10. I don't know whether Senator Catherine Muma has looked at Article 10 on principles of national governance and good values, that the president should be able to provide this progress report to the House. And we can, when the president is doing annual State of the Nation address, he can provide about, because under Article 2.6, international obligations, where Kenya is a signatory, we become part of the entire process. And therefore, looking at the upshot and interpretation of Article 132 on the functions of the president, it says, report in progress to the nation, all the measures taken and the progress achieved in realization of national values referred to Article number 10. And therefore, what Senator Muma is doing is within the Constitution. And I hope in future, as the president submits the progress report on the, for example, on human rights, this is some of the issues under SDGs are captured in both white, blue rights and red rights under the conventions that Kenya has signed under United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. And Kenya is a signatory, Mr. Speaker, to many instruments that are there, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to say, I would want to really to see the outcome and the prayers that will be achieved and the resolution of the House, Mr. Speaker, so that we can have counties bring an active role. So that counties, I can see counties, Mr. Speaker, so that of course, decent work and economic growth, Mr. Speaker, just to run through innovation, reduce inequality, sustainable cities and communities. I think those are 17 that have been, the Kenyans should know, Mr. Speaker, that SDGs is meant for all developing countries, but MDGs, no, SDGs was all countries, but MDGs were meant for developing countries. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support this motion.
Thank you, Senator Cheragei. Senator Cheragei, the resolution sought from the Senate is that the Senate resolves that the State Department for Economic Planning, listen, in consultation with the Council of Governors, comes up with reviewed implementation roadmaps for the 2 levels of government. Senator Danson Mungatana.
Bwana Spika, nataka kuchukua nafasi hii kukupa asante kwa kunipa nafasi na mimi niongee kuhusu mswada huu. Kwanza ningeanza kwa kusema asante sana kumpa kongole Mheshimiwa Catherine Muma kwa kuleta mswada huu hapa bungeni Senate. Mheshimiwa Spika, mswada huu ni mswada wa maana sana. Kama wenzangu walivyosema hapo mbele, ni kwamba tunaongea kuhusu